My name's Karen Barbito, and I'm your host for today's Facebook Live show. This is Support After Abortion's Healing Network Facebook Live. It happens every Tuesday at 4 p.m., and we're so excited that you're here with us today. I want you to take a moment right now to share this live video with all your Facebook friends, because you never know who might see it and really want to reach out for help, want to become part of the industry, or what have you. So be part of the solution for people in your lives. So share it on Facebook right now. Like us on Facebook. We really appreciate you doing that for us, so we get broader viewership and more people can be helped. I also want to just bring to light that we do have another conference starting. It's going to be October 28th through 30th. And throughout the intro video, you saw the website where you could go to participate in that. It's free to everyone. There's a lot of live footage in it. It's 9 to 5 through those dates, Wednesday through Friday, October 28th through 30th. So we hope that you'll join us then. So without further ado, we're going to get to our show. We have an awesome guest with us today, a good friend of mine. Without further ado, help me in welcoming Wendy Giancola. She's the Director of Pregnancy Loss Ministry at the Capitol Hill Pregnancy Center. Wendy, how are you?
I'm well, and how are you, my friend?
I'm good. I'm so glad you're here. I love seeing your sweet face. Yeah, it's really good to see you. It's been too long, right?
Yes, I miss you.
I miss you too. So it was great seeing you in the planning meeting for speakers for our upcoming conference. And so let's just get started, right? So you're sitting in this chair for a reason. You have a story of your own. So would you mind starting and address the audience, those that are watching, and tell us what your journey's been like?
Oh, wow. So much. Well, my journey started when, it starts even before this, but when I was 19, a freshman in college, I found I was pregnant and with my boyfriend of a year. And, it's nothing that you really expect is going to happen. We were using contraception, actually. We were using something. And so we really didn't expect for it to happen. And prior to that, I was looking for love and thought I could find it in a man. So I found myself pregnant. And when I saw that pregnancy test positive, I was devastated. I was the first person in my family to go to college. It was a really big deal. I was going to break out of the mold. I was going to be the one to break out of the mold. And it was the same for my boyfriend. And so had so many hopes and dreams and plans of success and everything else in life, to move beyond where we were. And just the idea of getting pregnant as a freshman just scared the daylights out of me. I had so much fear of the judgment because it was just not accepted. There was already judgment in my family of other family members that had happened to, judgment in society, the fear of, can I do this? Can I actually do this? I really feared that I would be a bad parent, that I had no idea how to parent. What did I know? There was just so much fear and so much pressure to, I need to continue this life, this trajectory that everybody else and myself have for me. And the same was true for my boyfriend. And, I remember crashing outwardly and he crashed inwardly. We talked about it and what to do, but I don't really remember a whole lot of those conversations because that was a long time ago. But we really felt very trapped. There's that quote of a woman chooses abortion like a animal chews off its leg, and a trapped animal chews off its leg, right, to escape. And that's really what it felt like.
Yeah. I can really relate to that, because I was a freshman in college too. And I wasn't the first to go to college, but I had hopes and dreams for my life. And so I can totally relate to that. But there was an extra measure of stuff for you in that, right? Because of your physical condition as a young child. And we hear people talk all the time about my health. I can't be pregnant and carry this pregnancy to term because of my health. You want to share a little bit about that and how that added to?
for sure that added to it. So I have I was born with a heart defect, a pretty serious heart defect. And so, yeah, that definitely played into it. It was one of the reasons why I couldn't use the pill. We used other types of contraception. And so I really thought, well, there's no way. We were very fearful that I wouldn't be able to carry a pregnancy to term. Not that I ever consulted my cardiologist to double check that, but we just made that assumption that I can't, I'm not going to be able to do that. And so without tremendous physical injury to myself. And so that definitely played into it. And, I do want to share this too. Speaking of my health issue, and I didn't consult my own cardiologist, but when I went to the clinic, once we decided to have an abortion, and I don't remember if it was that I called them in advance or when I was there, but I remember telling them that I had a very serious heart condition, and they asked me no further questions. They never said they wanted to consult my cardiologist. They just said, oh, well, then you'll need anesthesia and an IV antibiotic afterwards.
Yeah.
And this is how much it'll cost, and so now I can look back and say, wow, they never asked me.
Yeah.
I didn't think anything of it then. I figured, well, they're the experts. They know what they're doing. So this must be the way it is,
Yeah, we hear that very often, right? Because they are the expert. And so we take their advice. I do want to just bring something to mind to the people that are watching. I used birth control back in the day. I'm a much different person today, and Support After Abortion does not condone the use of using birth control or refer forward or tell people where to go get it. So I just want to make that clear to the people that are watching. But we know that our life was much different when we made the decision to abort than it is today. And so let's move on to that, Wendy, because, so you had the abortion, you're still with the father of the baby, and tell me what the journey was like after that. And into your healing and how your healing happened, because you can sit here today and talk about your abortion experience very calmly. It wasn't so much like that. No. And how far removed were you from your abortion when you reached out for help? If that was a lot, but if you could kind of touch on those points.
So I can see that after my abortion, I really disconnected. I totally disconnected. Because I think it was just so overwhelming. And I do remember sitting there in the recovery room and it's still very vivid of, sitting there with the antibiotic for so long. And I still don't like brown pleather because of it, but it was devastating. And I really dissociated and disconnected from what had happened because I just couldn't cope with it. And my boyfriend and I did stay together. We had just the right amount of dissimilar dysfunction to be able to continue, because I know that doesn't happen in a lot of relationships, but we stayed together, which is unusual, but we did. But I was such an angry, rageful woman afterwards. I was just so angry, and I blamed him so much and didn't even know it. We both became workaholics, successaholics, for years, kept that buried. I became very promiscuous, feeling that, he deserved for me to be this way, outside of our relationship. And, because I was just so angry. And so just had horrible relationships, started drinking more and more, just all those kinds of things. And eventually hit a bottom. My, by then, husband, we actually got married, very dysfunctional. But we got married, and our marriage was so bad that he said, well, let's try church. He thought that would fix it. Maybe, I don't know. And I didn't really have a whole lot of relationship. I mean, I believed in God. I had heard about God as a kid, but I didn't really know much beyond that. And so I thought, that's kind of crazy. Why are we doing that? Fine. I went and didn't listen. But eventually I heard a story, the story of the adulterous woman, and it broke me. It totally broke me. And so that started me on my faith journey. And then many years later, I was in a church group where it was mentioned that the next week somebody was going to talk about abortion. And that was the one thing I hadn't dealt with. I mean, I had gone through recovery for my many other issues, but I hadn't dealt with that. There's no way I can deal with that. And so when I heard somebody was going to bring that up in church, I was angry all over again. I was so irritated. How dare you bring that up in church? What are you going to say? Why would you say that? Why would you even talk about that? That's ridiculous. That's really how I felt. And I actually went to that person and confronted her and asked her, what do you think you're going to say? What do you plan on talking about? Thinking, you're all high and mighty. And she was great. She was wise and said, why don't we talk a little bit about why this is so hard for you? I lost it. My whole story came out of my mouth to her. And she introduced me to the concept of healing. She gave me a little book and a little book on healing and called Forgiveness is Free. And so I went through that with another woman one-on-one and started that journey. And it was at least 15 minutes in between.
Yeah,
15 years.
That's so good. 15 minutes, yeah, 15 years. That's so good. There's so much in there that I just want to revisit or just point out to those people that are watching. Number one, for the father of the baby and the mother to stay together and then get married and still be married is really uncommon. But we're so grateful that that happened. Yeah, so I want to give you kudos, even though you guys kind of grew up through your dysfunction together, right? Yeah, so that's really great. The other thing that I wanted to point out is the insight that you gave us to what it was like for you to be sitting in the pew when they were going to talk about abortion. Today we want to connect with the church. We want the church to be able to create a safe place for people to be able to share their struggle after abortion. So that's great insight for us. So for those of you that are watching, if you're clergy, this is an inside view. This is like being like a fly on the wall inside Wendy Giancola's head of what it was like for her when she was in church. And we're going to talk about Sanctity of Human Life Sunday, just to give you some context of how women and men that have been impacted by abortion sit in those pews and feel so condemned and judged and afraid and ashamed, right? And the reason for that, Wendy, was because you were judging yourself already, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I was totally condemning myself. And because that day healing wasn't talked about. Nobody mentioned that. Nobody mentioned healing. They just said, we're going to talk about abortion. So I was left to think I was going to be more condemned. And that scared me. That scared me.
So I just saw some things coming through our chat feed. I've been remiss. Listen, if you have questions for Wendy, ask them on Facebook. Our Santi will get us, our technical guy will get them to us, and we'll answer your questions as we go along. Just please shout them out, because Wendy's here. She's here for you today so that you can better understand healing, who she is, and why she's sitting in this seat. So again, Wendy, thank you for that. So you went through Forgiven and Set Free. Linda Cochran, we have to mention her. She is like the originator of after abortion healing. So you did that one-on-one. What transpired after that? How did your healing continue? And how did you start to become part of the pregnancy center where you work?
So, so that was helpful. That gave me, I will say that just gave me a layer of healing. I think healing comes in layers, right? There's always more healing. There's always more depth to be found in healing. So that kind of started my journey. And then the person who had introduced me to healing is actually the director of the center. And so she knew by then my story and asked me if I would come volunteer at the center. And so I agreed to go and volunteer because I wanted other people to, I wanted to help other people. And in doing so, I realized that I still needed more healing myself, that my healing was pretty incomplete because I stayed pretty shallow when I first went through healing. I'll just be real, right? I was pretty shallow and was afraid to go there. So I went, I then did went through a group. And that was even much more powerful to me and much more helpful to be with a group of women going through healing. And then from there, I was asked to come on staff and kind of re-energize and restart the healing program, because we didn't really have an abortion recovery or healing program at the center at the time. So that led me on a journey to start it from the ground up, at least for our center.
Yeah, my healing was like that as well. So I, again, like you, very much like your story, I from my abortion went down a really dark road in my life and ended up being an alcoholic and a drug addict, and went through a whole lot of recovery, really cleaned up my side of the street and my mess and all the wreckage that I created in not only my life, but the people that I loved. But it never occurred to me that I needed to heal from my abortion. And it didn't occur to me until like 15 years later, 15 years sober. And it really wasn't until I started working in this ministry, or in this kind of lane of, I don't know what to call it, in the after abortion healing ministry, that it even occurred to me that I needed to heal from that, because I thought I was good. So if you're a Christian and have found forgiveness in Christ and have forgiven all the people that played a part in your abortion, or if you've been through recovery and done the steps and did your fearless and moral inventory, there still could be some stuff resonating in you regarding your abortion. Because for me, that wound I shoved down so completely deep that I had myself convinced that it wasn't a problem for me at all. Yeah. So
I still can relate to that. Yeah, because I went through the 12-step journey myself. So yeah,
me too. So that's such good stuff. So you're in the pregnancy center, you're helping them develop a program, and one didn't really exist. So what was that journey like? And we got to get to your book, right? Wendy is the author of Transforming Your Story. It's a curriculum that we use all the time. We absolutely love it. But tell me, how did that come about? Because this is a really great story.
Well, I was researching all the curriculum that was out there, trying to find what would fit best for the women who come to our center. And just based on demographics, as well as my own healing journey, I was really struggling to find something that felt like a really good fit and that women would stick with. And so I have a thing for being very, very story-based. Stories, I learned more about healing through story than anything else, right? So stories were important to me. And so actually there was a person kind of shared with my director, or kind of prophesied, I know some people don't like that word, but kind of said a prophecy that a book would be coming out of our center, because I was really struggling to find a book that I really could really embrace for our center. I love all the curriculum that's out there. I do. And I use it with various different individuals and groups and stuff as needed, but it just wasn't really hitting. And when somebody prophesied that to her, I said to my director, I said, well, good luck with that. Because I'm not she's like, well, so maybe you should write a book. I'm like, no, you should do that. I'm not going to do that. And I just kept saying, no, that's not me. That's not me. That's not me. And I just really didn't want to do it, because I said, there's so much good stuff out here. Why would I do that when there's so much better stuff out there? So much good stuff. Who am I? Who am I to do this? And it finally took a car accident. I had a major car accident that put me out of commission for months. And so what am I going to be able to do? Because I broke my pelvis. And so I couldn't go anywhere or do anything. So I started researching to actually finally write. I finally said yes, because it just felt like God was like, okay, Jonah, quit running. I'm going to make sure you stop running, and quit giving me the excuses, Moses. And so that's kind of how it started. And like I said, there you go.
That's awesome, Wendy. We do have a question about that. The question is, Wendy, I went through your book with a Support After Abortion virtual group and loved it. In particular, the scriptural references. How did you find all of those?
Not because I'm all that good. A lot of it was because I love story. I just connected so much more to story than anything else. When I was first going through my own healing journey, through my own faith journey. And so it just, stories felt right to me. And being part of the 12-step movement, is all about sharing stories. And so that felt right to me. So I just started looking through all the different stories of scripture, reading story after story. And some of it was just prayer and whatever God leads you to. And just a lot of reading of a lot of different things, going to a lot of different, conferences. And it doesn't help. And it helped that my husband was going through seminary classes at the time. So he kind of helped with that. And he was very much my context police. I call him the context police, making sure things were in context. So, yeah.
That's so good. So let me tell you a little bit more about Wendy's book, because it is one of my favorites. There's a couple of things that I love about it. Well, number one, story. The Bible is the great storybook of all time, right? I mean, it's the greatest book of all time. And so just to give you a sneak peek into Wendy's book, one of the first groups is the woman at the well. And Jesus meets her there. And through their conversation, he asks her if she wants to drink of the living water and thirst no more. And I love this because we do this. There's a lot of practical application in Wendy's book, a lot of activities. So when we're in a small group, we'll bring a pitcher of water in glasses and go to each participant and fill that glass and say, do you want to drink of the living water? Do you want to thirst no more? And if they say yes, they're buying into the process. I love that, because going through healing is really tough, right? And some people want to back out just when when it starts to get hard. But I can say, hey, you drank of the water, right? Like you drank of the water, like you said yes. So I'm right. So I love that about your book, and they're so relevant. David and Bathsheba. There's just so many great stories in there. So check it out. It's called Transforming Your Story by Wendy Giancola. It's great for virtual groups. It's great for in-person groups. It's great. I don't know. I don't know how it would be one-on-one, but because there are so many you do. How does that work out for you?
Really, really well. It can be really powerful just because you can spend so much more time individually dissecting the stories. I'm working with a young woman virtually right now. And that was, what she chose to use. And it's just been so rich because we can really dig into the story. And, in between each story, as there's a personal story from somebody as well. So it's been really great to pick out the different stories that really relate to her story, both the biblical stories and the personal stories that she's reading. And that's what we say about the book is, it's biblical stories intersecting with personal stories to transform your story.
Yeah.
And so it's just been a really neat way to do that. And I still do the activities with them, even if it's individual, because I think to me, one of the reasons why those are in there is I'm a brain science geek, and there's a lot to be said about the connection of the hemispheres of the brain to be able to process through like trauma, to connect the verbal with the physical, the emotional, and all of that coming together is really key for healing.
Yeah. Yeah, that was good, Wendy. That's really good. So you have your own curriculum now, or it's in the works. You're back at your pregnancy center. Now you're in Washington, D.C. I would think that there could be some extra challenges that those of us that live in other parts of the area would experience. Do you want to talk about that a little bit and tell us how you've overcome that?
Well, we're not the most beloved thing. Beloved type of service provider in the DC area because of just the work that we do. It's political. It's of course, as we know, we get politically attached. We don't do it on purpose, but we tend to get politically attached. People attach politics to it, and so we definitely get our fair share of protesters and things like that. And it is a very transient area. You and I talked about that earlier. It is a transient area because of the nature of politics changing every 4 years. You can have people who are there for very specific reasons, and then they're going to move on because the political climate has changed, and so they move to another area, or things like that. And we also are there's a couple of colleges nearby as well. And so we sometimes see college students who are only there for a short period of time and then they're gone. And so, I guess those are some of the challenges that we see.
Yeah, I would guess that most of us don't deal with protesters around our building. How does that affect like when the women come into your center, and I mean, how do you handle that with?
Well, it's interesting because fortunately, thus far, most of the time the protesters come later in the day and in the evening. So the harder part though is that we're located on an intersection, and so they're out there with their signs, and anybody who drives by trying to tell everybody who drives by how terrible we are, and so it's tough. You know, we've gone out there and just said, you know, we try to show the kindness and love of Jesus to them. Because what are you going to do? Go out there and say, you know, that's not going to help the situation. So instead, you know, we offer, we'll say, how are you? Can we get you anything? Do you need some water? You know, we'll be kind to them because that's who we are. You know, we still have to be who we are, no matter what is going to happen, you know? And so we're inside saying, okay, whatever, we'll just pray.
I love that. I love that you're meeting that hate with love and compassion. Right. I absolutely love that. So Wendy, the comments are just blowing up of all kinds of glowing things for you. That's why I'm smiling, because I'm reading the comments, and maybe it's not at the right time in concert with what you're saying, but beautiful book, an amazing book by an amazing world. The world needs more prophets. Thank you. It's a connection to our baptismal vows. Wendy's book is a great way to use story in the healing. Our God is a storyteller. So I just want you to hear that feedback, because I want you to be encouraged that there are people watching that have done your book. And so I'm so grateful for that. Okay. If you have any questions before we move on to a different topic, please submit them now. But I want to talk about the last virtual conference. You were in our last virtual conference and you presented on self-care. So what was that conference experience like for you? And could you share a little bit about why that topic is so important to you? If you're a pregnancy center, if you work in this ministry, it's hard. You're listening to some really hard stories. You're pressing up against some real resistance. And so self-care is super important. And we're going to learn now from Wendy how she implements that in her own life.
So the conference was awesome. I'm really, really grateful. I'll say more about that in a second. But in terms of the topic, so I was in the middle of a group when COVID hit and everybody had to go, you know, sequester and go virtual. And I historically have not been a huge computer tech person, as you, Karen, and many others know about me. And so it was a huge challenge to me because I valued this group and I didn't want to stop it just because of that. And so I had to really overcome my own natural distaste for that. So I've learned a lot and I'm grateful. But it was just a lot for me, and it was just a very heavy time. I'm sure anybody who had a group during that time knows it was even heavier than typical, right? And I thought I was doing good self-care and was realizing that I wasn't. The group lasted a lot longer because we were trying to be kind and understanding of the struggles that everybody was going through on top of trying to heal, right? And I just found that I wasn't caring for myself as well as I could have been. And afterwards, I was really drained and had to really do some self-analysis. And, you know, we need to care for ourselves. Anybody out there who does this work knows we do have to care for ourselves, right? It's important for us to do that because we can only help others as far as we've gone ourselves, right? And if we're not caring for ourselves well, we're sure not caring for them well. Right. And so that was a hard thing to realize. So I just felt that was an important topic. So there's that.
So what are some of the things that you do? What are some suggestions that you can make for those people that are watching? If they're feeling like you did, if they're feeling drained or browning out, or, you know, it's just not as enthusiastic about getting up in the morning and coming to work. I mean, I love my job. I can't wait to get up to go to work in the morning, and I don't want to leave at the end of the day. So but what do you recommend for people?
Well, part of it is just kind of taking your emotional and spiritual temperature on a more regular basis. You know, I'm good at caring for others, right? And sometimes that means we care for others to the detriment of caring for ourselves. And so I learned from other resources, I love the Dan Allender Center, the importance of having sort of a baseline of here's the baseline that I need to care for myself. And then when things are tough, I need to add more things to that, or maybe make changes to the current practices that I do. Because I was doing some of the current practices I typically do, but I wasn't doing any extra stuff to care for myself well. I wasn't recognizing, okay, I'm like, I am resting, but I needed to add more rest and give myself permission to do that. Does that make sense?
Can you give us some concrete examples of the things that you do, though? I want you to name them for people, whether it's exercise, eat well, rest, could you just name those things that work for you?
Yeah. It's definitely, exercise is very important to me, even if it's just a small walk around the block, that's so important to get the endorphins running. So I definitely do that. And a lot of hydration. I learned how important hydration is. So drinking more and more water than anything. And I've added in some scripture meditation. There's a practice called Lectio Divina. And I found a podcast that helps me do Lectio Divina on a regular basis. So I take a break during the day to just refresh my spirit and soul, to just do some deep breathing, relaxation, and get into that. So that's been super helpful. So I'm really grateful to do that. And then getting the rest. And I'm also a people person. And so COVID's been really hard for me because I'm a people person and I'm a hugger and I'm a high risk person. So I've had to be super cautious, and that's been hard. And so it's been trying to find other ways to make those connections, whether it's adding in Zoom lunches, dinners, whatever, but finding ways to add those connections.
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear that. Thank you so much for loving yourself enough to pour into yourself, right? I love that about you. And so take heed, people. There's self-care is super important if you want to be able to continue serving others at your best, giving them your best, and helping them the most. So I need to take a moment here just for a second to talk about our virtual groups. If you'll go to www.supportafterabortion.com, under our resources tab, you'll see our virtual groups. We have several different groups offered to you. There's After Abortion Healing. There's Unraveled Roots, which is the book that I co-wrote with Lisa Rowe, the CEO of Support After Abortion, and Melinda Means, a great author herself. We have codependency groups, sexual trauma groups, and things like that. So check that out. We have the dates that they're available. Lisa Rowe is going to be starting an Unraveled Roots group in the beginning of November. So if you want to take that virtual group with one of the authors of the book, you have that opportunity. So supportafterabortion.com/resources virtual groups. Thank you for that little ad that I put in there.
And I love the Roots book. I will give a plug for that book as well. I think that's been really a great book. I think it's so important that once we finish a healing journey, no matter what it is, there's more to it. There's always more. It's always an unraveling, right? It's always a peeling of the onion. And so we need to keep going. So I love that you guys have so many options to keep the conversation going and to keep the healing and growing.
Yes, because honestly, our unplanned pregnancy and our abortions were just symptoms of something deeper, right?
Yeah.
So let's move on then. Is there anything else that you want to say about the last virtual conference? I'm not sure if it's still available. If it is, you can access that at supportafterabortionvirtualconference.com. I know you can register for the October conference. Again, those are October 28th through 30th. It's going to be live from 9 to 5 on those days. There's a lot of live booths that you can watch live. And there's also the Premier Pass that we'll have available for you to have that content for an extended period of time. If you haven't already shared this Facebook Live, do it right now. Somebody out there needs to hear this message that Wendy's been sharing with you. It could touch somebody's life that had an abortion years ago, 15 years ago, like Wendy waited until she got connected to her healing, and she might hear something that will just encourage her to pick up the phone and reach out for help. So Wendy, you're going to be a part of our new conference, right? Mm-hmm. Different topic.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want you to give too much away. You're going to want to come and watch Wendy live. You are going to be on a live panel with me, talking to women and men that have written curriculum on after abortion healing, but you're doing another presentation. And so just give me a little teaser for the audience so that they'll lean in and they'll want to come and watch you and watch your video in our conference. Just a little teaser.
Well, it's the find out why you need to keep going. Learn why. It's about why you need to keep going, the benefits. What is this about, and why bother?
Oh, wow. That's got me intrigued. I even know what your topic is, and that's got me intrigued. So you're going to want to watch that. That's not what I expected to come out of your mouth just then. So any final words for those people that are watching, Wendy?
If you go to the conference, go to the upcoming conference, there is so much material. There's so much good stuff there. So do that. I just, for anybody who's might be watching, who's had an abortion in their past, there is healing, there's transformation. You can transform how you view and experience your abortion. Mm-hmm. There's so much more for you. Don't stay stuck, grow, heal. There's so much more. For those who are serving in this field, same thing. We're never done. Every time I work with somebody individually or as a group, I grow more. There's a deeper level every time. And it's always awesome and always a blessing. So don't stop.
That's awesome, Wendy. Thank you. I'm just going to piggyback on this for a little bit and say that if you're a pregnancy center and if you don't have an after abortion healing program, contact our director of expansion. You can call our Hope line and select extension 2 and get connected with Jessie Lapek. She can teach you how to develop and grow a healing program for your pregnancy center. And, I have to end on this note. If you're watching or if you know somebody that's been impacted by an abortion, the enemy is keeping you in silence, saying that you're being condemned or judged by God or the people around you. And I'm telling you, God does not want you to struggle in silence. He wants you to be able to talk to somebody about that experience and find full redemption and restoration and forgiveness from him. I know it's scary, but I'll be on the other end of the phone. Just pick up your phone and text us or call us at 844-289-4673. Your healing is just a phone call away. So thank you so much for watching. We'll be back next Tuesday at 4 p.m. with Dr. Joseph Roebuck. You don't want to miss him. He's a radiologist and a person that's been personally impacted by abortion himself. So that's next Tuesday, 4 p.m. on the Support After Abortion Healing Network Facebook Live. Thank you so much for watching today.